Hey, what's up? My name is Petrowski, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the most common mistakes that I see new PvP players making in PokeMMO. I wanted to make this guide because I know that personally I've committed literally all of these mistakes, especially when I was newer to the game. I've made all of these mistakes myself many times, and I wanted to help prevent you guys from maybe making those mistakes or helping you guys skip over that kind of, learning and making that mistake on your own. Maybe I could teach you guys that, and you don't have to go through that hardship. So, let's go ahead and get into it with tip number 1. So the most common mistake that I see new players making, or new PvP players making, is ignoring nature. So what this kind of means is natures give a 10% bonus to a certain stat and then a 10% reduction to a different stat. Natures are very important, very powerful, and I think new players don't realize, and me as a new player didn't realize how much 10% is. 10% sounded so little to me at the time, but it's actually quite a lot, and it's quite a huge increase, and it's very important, especially with all of the other stats like base stats and the EVs included. That's all included in that 10%, so it's very important. So let's go ahead and get into an example of an unusable Pokemon with a nature. Okay, so here's a fantastic example in Starmie. So a lot of people know that Starmie is a very fast special attacking Pokemon, and having 31 special attack and 31 speed on Starmie is very important. But the Starmie happens to be careful, which is a minus special attack nature, which is directly hurting this Pokemon. It is okay, in my opinion, to have comps that are kind of even like neutral nature, or having comps that maybe if this is a Starmie, and if this Starmie were to be calm, which is minus 10% attack and plus 10% special defense, it's not helping it a ton, but it's also not hurting it. I think it's okay to have comps like that. They're definitely suboptimal, and it's definitely heavily preferable to have the correct nature on a Pokemon like Starmie. Having modest or timid are the two objectively best natures to have on Starmie, because they subtract from attack, which is a stat that it doesn't need, while increasing either special attack or speed, which are stats that it very much needs. Starmie is a great example, and I think a lot of new players will kind of, breed a Pokemon, get these stats, and be like, oh, I'm sick of breeding, I don't want to do anymore, this is good enough, the IVs are so good, the IVs will carry it, and kind of push through the nature. But you can't really do that. 10% is just too much of a detraction from this Pokemon that it's never really worth, and the IVs can't push past that. So that's my first recommendation, is to care about nature a little more, or just never, you can never ever run a comp, in my opinion, that has a negative nature that is directly hurting it. Okay, the second most common mistake that I see from new PvP players is not checking speeds. And what I mean by that is, speed is an extremely important stat within Pokemon, and whether your Pokemon is going to go first or not within a move or within a turn is going to decide the outcome and decide whether your Pokemon lives or dies. So it's very important to, if you don't know the speed of your opposing Pokemon, your opponent's Pokemon, to look it up in the Pokedex, or if you don't have that Pokemon in the Pokedex, so for example, I don't have Feraligatr in the Pokedex, and I check this Pokemon's speed a lot, I always have Black-White Smogon up on the side screen whenever I'm battling, whenever I'm playing Pokemon PvP. And that's a really important site where you can go to check movesets, EV spreads, base stats, and everything like that, natures, everything that a Pokemon is usually gonna have. You use Black-White Smogon on PokeMMO because that's the most accurate to this gen, although it's not entirely accurate, and I talked about that in my PokeMMO Smogon video that came out recently, so go ahead and check that out. I'll link that below. But yeah, just check your speeds. It's super important. Also, when checking speeds, consider things like Choice Scarf. That's something excruciatingly important. That's a mistake that I still make a ton, is when checking speeds, consider, hey, is my opponent's Pokemon a Pokemon that could utilize Choice Scarf? Does this Pokemon often run Choice Scarf? Because if you don't think about that, they outspeed you, they one-shot you, you're like, hey, you just lost a Pokemon for free when you could have just safe swapped to some sort of tank or wall, or a Pokemon that could have dealt with it better. Not checking speeds is the quickest way to lose a match off of one turn. It's very important. Okay, mistake number 3 is going to be that I don't feel as though new PokeMMO PvP players prioritize stab moves enough. And if you don't know what stab moves are, stab basically is an acronym that means same type attack bonus. And same type attack bonus basically boosts the power of a move that shares typing with the Pokemon you're using by 1.5 times. So I'll go ahead and show you an example. And a good guideline is that usually most sweepers that you're using are going to want one stab move per typing that they have. So for example, this Blaziken has Flare Blitz and High Jump Kick because it's fire and fighting. Having those double stab moves is so important because it makes them do so much more damage. 1.5 times damage is a ton of damage. When you combine a stab move with a choice band or a choice specs, it just really creates such raw damage coming from a high power move like Flare Blitz or High Jump Kick. Especially in a tier like NU, nothing is going to survive that. Even if it like resists it, it's going to chunk its health by like 60% at least. It's going to do so much damage. So if you ever encounter a situation where, let's say theoretically, every single one of these moves was going to hit my opponent for neutral damage, you want to be clicking either Flare Blitz or High Jump Kick because they're just going to do more damage inherently because of stab. That's my main takeaway from this. If you have two options between a non-stab move and a stab move and they both do neutral damage to a target, make sure you always click that stab move. And then on to a more specific example that I love bringing up is this Ursaring. So this Ursaring is a Guts, Flame Orb, Adamant, Facade Ursaring. And that's a lot to unpack, but if you don't know about that, don't worry about it too much. Guts basically just boosts the attack if it's status and ignores damage, burns damage reduction. So you burn your Ursaring on purpose, and Facade is a move that doubles its base power if your Pokemon is statused. And Facade has stab from Ursaring. So basically, this is a niche example where what basically happens is once your Ursaring is statused, you're almost going to be clicking Facade every single time because the sheer damage from Facade is going to be doing more damage than if a move were to be super effective against the Pokemon. As long as Facade isn't like resisted, and then sometimes even if it is resisted, it's the right option. So for example, if a move is super effective against a Pokemon, it's going to do 2 times damage. Thunder Punch has 75 base power. Let's say it's super effective against a Pokemon. It's now going to be doing what? What is that? 150? Yeah, 150. So Facade, if you're burned, is going to be doing 140 times 1.5. Which is going to end up making Facade a 210, if my math is correct, base power move, as opposed to a 150 super effective Thunder Punch. So it's just a great example showing like the sheer power of stab on top of other effects as well. Okay, moving on to mistake number 3 that I see the most from new PokeMMO players is going to be not switching out enough. And I am definitely super guilty of this to this day. I don't know if it comes out of stubbornness or out of just laziness, but just lacking the awareness or the ability to switch out, say, hey, you know what, this Pokemon can't face this Pokemon, and switching out, having a wall or two within your team to pivot to. If you don't know, if your opponent is a decent player and they switch in a Pokemon onto your Pokemon, they probably have a way to kill it, right? So you have to think about that. You have to consider like what move could they have, like what are they trying to do? And most of the time, when your opponent switches in a Pokemon, you're either going to need to already be taking that turn to set up, and now you can stay in and be super strong anyway, or take that as a notice of like, hey, this thing can kill me, I need to switch out, and take that L, switch out. It's important to understand, like, it's not a loss to switch out, it's like a pivot. I always kind of get stubborn, and I'm like, oh, it's like I'm losing if I switch out, like, oh, it's a loss, like, oh, it's like a power, it feels like a waste. I want to be stubborn and just fight and bash my head into the wall. It's important to switch out, pivot, have that wall Pokemon to pivot to, and then pivot back into a more aggressive physical or special threat. So TLDR, don't be afraid to switch out, especially after your opponent switches a Pokemon in, if it's to specifically deal with your Pokemon. Usually they have a reason they swapped that Pokemon in. Okay, and the fifth most common mistake that I see new players making or new PvP players making is caring too much about 31 IVs. And I don't really know where this came from. The kind of mental behind this has changed a ton over the course of PokeMMO, especially alongside the changes of breeding. But it seems as though everyone prioritizes 31s to such a kind of minuscule, silly extent where they're costing themselves so much Pokeyen to get these like 5x31 Pokemon, and then they either don't like the Pokemon in competitive, or don't have fun, or it feels like a waste, and they like quit PvP altogether, or just sell the Pokemon and do something else, or try to like build a new team and feel like they've wasted their time and wasted their money. What I always recommend is it can be really important to get 31s in specific stats, but I always heavily recommend going for kind of 30s or 25 plus. In certain things, I'll go 20 plus. Like, you can kind of skimp on certain Pokemon's defenses. Like, on a Starmie, I think it's personally okay to kind of go like 20 plus on defense and special defense. Having 25 HP to balance that out is nice. And then hopefully they're at least like, hopefully maybe like the special defense is like 27, and then maybe the defense is 22. And that's where like it's like okay, you know? Like, I think it's very important to encourage new players to understand that. But there are some certain guidelines, and there are stats that are, it's much more important to have a 31 in those stats, and usually those stats are either the damage, so special attack or attack, and speed. Speed is by far the most important stat to have a 31 in on most Pokemon. Obviously, if it's a slow Pokemon, or if you're running like a Trick Room team, it's different, but for something like Starmie, for something like Blaziken, any sort of fast threat sweeper, having that 31 speed can be extremely important, and sometimes having that 31 speed plus speed nature like Jolly or Timid is going to be crucial, because you're going to be wanting to outspeed or at least speed tie the same Pokemon. Sometimes you need to understand, like, hey, if my Starmie is Timid and 31 speed, it's going to at least speed tie my opponent's Starmie, if not else. I have a pretty good chance to outspeed them, if not speed tie, so I can stay in and throw up that Thunderbolt or whatever you want to throw up. So I think it's important to at least, you know, encourage new players to not splurge all of their newfound money on 5x31 Pokemon, and just be okay with making some, you know, not perfect comps. This game is, PokeMMO has never been about perfect comps. That's really only become the case like over the last couple years due to the breeding system changes. Before that, like, you were like getting a Pokemon with 20 plus across was considered like godlike, was the term that was always thrown around back in the day. It was godlike. I would love to do more like kind of like rambles about old Pokemon history and old Pokemon stuff. I think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of funny. I'm in no way like a boomer, and I am in no way like back in my day like it was better. I think the systems that are in place in the game right now are incredible and beautiful, and I love them. But I definitely just appreciate some of the older stuff, and I think it's fun to reminisce. Anyways, that's for a different video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. Leave comments, questions, feedback, concerns in the comments. Subscribe for more daily PokeMMO content. Join my Discord below. That's linked below in social medias. There's people there chatting. They'll help you team build. You can answer questions about pricing. You can shiny hunt with people, communicate, have fun, just interact with people who also love this game. So thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Peace.